Hello, book fam. Last week I tried something different. I downloaded TikTok on my phone and I started checking out the Book Talk community. And I liked what I saw. Book Talk is very different to BookTube. Book Talk is all about shallow, short form content, and BookTube is all about deep conversations, deep topics, deep concepts. And we're all bookworms. But some people like different types of content. So I was going to study the short form content on Book Talk and try to apply the lessons I learned to BookTube. And in the process of that study, I decided to make a Book Talk, and I liked it, and I like the community differences. I like how on Book Talk you can make a small short form video about one singular idea, because on BookTube you make a long form video, but it's only 90 seconds long. That's not going to be pushed by the algorithm very strongly. So the goal for this week is to reach 100 followers on Book Talk because that's what a lot of booktubers are doing. That's how a lot of booktubers are getting their start. They're building a following on Book Talk, they're building a community, and then they transfer over to BookTube and they try to convert those followers from Book Talk to BookTube. And it's a very valid strategy. And I'm trying to implement that strategy now. And I think it's going to pay dividends. So get 100 followers on Book Talk. On the reading front, I want to read something silly and stupid, but I also want to read something scary and serious. I just got to pick out which books I'm going to read. My TBR is a mile long, and we'll see what thoughts commingle in my head. We'll see the chemistry that happens in my brain. Because on this channel, I read and I think things, and then I talk about them, and you are my unwilling victim of those thoughts. So let's see how this week goes. My serious read for the week is Cold Moon Over Babylon by Michael McDowell. Michael McDowell, I read his book Blackwater a few weeks ago, and it was amazing. Cold Moon Over Babylon is another Southern Gothic horror story. My silly read I'm going to be reading is Critical Failures Part 2 by Robert Bevan. This is a Dungeons and Dragons spoof series. It has 9 installments. The 10th installment is forthcoming. And it's silly, it's unserious. The writing perhaps isn't of a super high level, but I love the characters and I love the dialogue. I found that when I pair an uncomfortable, unsettling horror read with a silly read, it doesn't leak over into my day-to-day life. I'm not looking over my shoulder when I'm driving at nighttime. I'm not having trouble sleeping. I feel like a lot of people could read a lot more horror fiction if they were pairing it with some silly slapstick D&D lit RPGs. I'm going to say something fairly controversial. Michael McDowell is a better author than Stephen King. Stephen King is still my favorite author. I love Stephen King's books, but Michael McDowell can write like no other. His dialogue is amazing. His characterization is amazing. His pacing is slow, but super satisfying and amazing. I'm only 20% through Cold Moon Over Babylon. And I'm already engrossed. I'm already emotionally invested. Stephen King will let you know every little detail about a character, and that grows your connection with them, and then he kills them off. And then the feels come. Then all the depressing, big, sad emotions come. Michael McDowell will do the opposite. He will kill a character, and in the aftermath of their demise, he will make you care about that character. So you start to mourn a character you had so little details about. And that's pretty damn impressive. Michael McDowell, I believe, if he did not pass away from complications to AIDS 25 years ago, I think he would be a household name. I think he would have been a rival to Stephen King. There is a reason that Stephen King said Michael McDowell is the best writer of paperback originals in America today. That was shortly before Michael McDowell passed away. So I think it's not out of line for me to say that McDowell is better than Stephen King because the King believes it. Cold Moon Over Babylon, it is brutal, it is atmospheric, it is creepy and eerie, and I can't wait to see where this creepy story goes. If you loved Up, and we all did, read A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman, another story about a grumpy old man who finds meaning in life again. If you loved The Emperor's New Groove, read Prince of Fools by Mark Lawrence, another humorous adventure story with great bromance. If you loved Luca, which I think is underrated, read My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante, another Italian story about friendship. Friday, so I'm continuing on through Cold Moon Over Babylon, and One thing I noticed, one thing I've been thinking about all day is that to make a great story, you can't just do one thing great. It is better to do two things to a very high level than to do one thing to a perfect level. Like, for example, I have read scarier books than the book I'm reading right now. I have read scarier books than just Stephen King. Stephen King isn't my favorite author because he writes the scariest books. He's my favorite author because he does great characterization, he does great dialogue, and he's also pretty dang scary. Michael McDowell isn't the scariest author I've ever come across, but his character work, his atmosphere is amazing, top notch, perhaps not the best I've ever encountered, but amongst the best, high level. So I feel like a great read requires a combination. It requires a conglomerate of good attributes. Because you could do one thing great, and that'll only fit a very particular person at a very specific time. Like, we all love a great action movie, but they're not very memorable because they're just about action. But when you add some great dialogue, you add a great romance, you add some great funny scenes, that's what makes a good movie a great movie. It's like a root beer is nothing special. Vanilla ice cream is nothing special. But when you have a root beer float, that's pretty damn awesome. I've never once said no to root beer float. So it's like, it's better to do several pretty good things than do one thing perfectly. So Cold Moon Over Babylon isn't the scariest book I've read. It's pretty damn scary, but I love the atmosphere. I love the characterization. He can describe a character, Michael McDowell can describe a character so in depth in just a paragraph. And very few authors can do that. We always hear show, don't tell when it comes to writing. But still, we're getting a lot of word vomit. Pages and pages of description, pages and pages of like adjectives and all these things about these characters so that we can get to better know them. But sometimes just one good place sentence could let you know a character in such a very real, lifelike way. So Michael McDowell, top notch at so many things, but not the greatest at anything. Also, I reached my goal of getting 100 followers on TikTok. I'm not the best book talker, but I'm a little bit better off than I was a few days ago. And that's an exciting place to be. I'm noticing differences between what types of shorts perform better on TikTok as opposed to YouTube, and I'm trying to make sense of it. But short content is something I'm unfamiliar with, but I feel like there's a lot of potential there. And it's kind of weird how you can post the same short form video to either TikTok or YouTube, and it can perform very differently. So we'll see what platform I'm better at doing shorts on, I guess. Sunday, I'm exhausted. Friday evening, I picked up my niece. She's only 1 because my sister is giving birth was giving birth to my nephew. So she went into labor on Friday. Nephew was born on Saturday. So I was watching the baby. But this is the first time my 1-year-old niece has been away from her parents. So she was hysterical. She was very sad, very upset, very moody, and consequently, I did not sleep a lick Friday night. And then on Saturday, because I live in a different town than my family does, I had to, transport my niece to Vegas and then hang out with my new nephew and then drive back and, rest and recuperate from the sleep that I missed. So I did not finish Critical Failures number 2 this week, which makes me sad. But I got to be there for family, and that's obviously more important than a weekly reading goal. But a little sad about that. I did finish Cold Moon Over Babylon, and it was a stellar book. It's over 30 years old, and it's a horror story. And horror stories from that time period, you could kind of guess a lot of the plot points. That being said, the execution was near flawless. Michael McDowell, like Stephen King, is able to write a very everyday story that we've seen before, but they add something special, something that's intangible, something that's hard to put into words that makes the story just a little bit better than other stories in the genre, other books that tell the same story. Cold Moon Over Babylon, I noticed one thing. I've only read 2 of his works, but Michael McDowell loves his curvy Southern women. In both of his works that I've read, the coolest female character is an overweight, beautiful, sassy Southern lady. And I think that might just be one of his things that he likes. Michael McDowell was a gay man. He probably had some curvy, preppy Southern women as friends. and that's what I like to imagine. But yes, Queenie Strickland and Blackwater, one of the best characters in the entire saga, and Belinda and Cold Moon Over Babylon, great characters. He loves those curvy, sassy, attractive Southern ladies. Cold Moon Over Babylon was brutal. It was unsettling at times. The big bad, he's a very easy villain to root against. He is very evil. I don't want to get into any particulars about the plot because that would be a spoiler, but give Cold Moon Over Babylon a try, particularly if you like Ghost and just pure evil humans that do monstrous things. It's like, are humans the real monsters, or are the monsters that are hunting down these evil individuals the real monsters? I don't know. Only 268 pages read, because I couldn't finish Critical Failures Part 2 yesterday because watching my niece. But Cold Moon Over Babylon, even though it was a little bit under 200 pages, it's a pretty slow read. It's very glacial, not in a bad way, very atmospheric. The author takes his time. But yeah, I really feel like I was reading it for more than 190-something pages or whatever. Next week, I'm going to try to read a bunch of short stories. I'm going to try to make some progress through The Stand. I'm going to finish Critical Failures Part 2. I'm also trying out some new video editing software, so hopefully this gets out to people on Monday. Oh, I reached my TikTok goal, 109 followers on TikTok. I was able to upload 5 shorts to YouTube and TikTok. What did I learn? Well, the algorithms are different for both websites. Like memes, surprisingly, did better on my YouTube than they did on my TikTok. Well, all my shorts did better on my YouTube, but that makes sense because I have more followers. And I also gained some subscribers on YouTube. So I am learning a little bit more about the art form of shorts. So hopefully I'll be able to keep the momentum on those, be able to constantly upload shorts to YouTube and TikTok, because I think that's a rhythm I can get into. This week was pretty damn good. I'm now the uncle to my first nephew by blood, and that's a pretty exciting thing. I can't wait to see what the stories have in store for me next week, and I'll talk to you guys next time.